So then, we are back with more understandings from the Renewed Covenant, from the Aramaic English translation of the Word. This Word translated from the original documents from the Hebrews of old, from the old prophets. We understand then in great deal what they mean and where we are at, where we stand, the liberties given then to every nation to line them up, and then the understanding also of the time of the end and the governments involved in refurbishing their political governments and then making the proper adjustments. It is very imperative for us to understand as a nation that there is a very critical point in the very near future where then the trades country of the end is going then to become much more influential, and those were then divinely given for our benefit, and then we should properly do the adjustments so then we can go with the flow of this new trades partner. This way then obviously we would increase our economy by not spending so much in the world. And it's very important also reminding ourselves what Great Britain is doing and the wise decision of not being part of the Eurozone. It was absolutely a very wise decision. And then the political reforms in Great Britain at the moment, they are very exemplary, and we should obviously copy their way of government as far as updating their own political reforms and political economy. And those both are hand to hand. For instance, being tougher with people trying then to evade taxes, being responsible, cut then the costs around the world. And then as far as the military, then the reducing of our forces, obviously, as this new partner then comes in with a solely purpose of trade and rebuilding. That's the time then where we should be wise and understand the times and the seasons. That's when then our government already is starting these rebuilding, and then we can easily understand from our forces being removed from the Middle East, indicating the time of rebuilding. It's very important, pointed out. And then the future adjustments of our government as per then the model already started by Great Britain. As we are English-speaking people, there is then from the past steps of formation, but those steps of formation always came mostly from Great Britain and then implemented around the world, mostly amongst the English-speaking countries. So it's very prudent for us to become very aware of this fact, and then when China begins its quest of then providing the world with materials and services for the nations to rebuild, and when the cargoes are then delivered, escorted, we should be very sensitive in understanding then when they go in certain areas escorting their cargo, then is our time to voice it out, the importance of then removing our forces and let the Chinese take over with a solely understanding of trade. So those nations then they can rebuild and then can disarm. That's the very most important point of our economy, of our reducing costs, and then it is in line with the reforms of Great Britain. Try to understand what they are doing. They are then having companies that were then paid by the government privatized. It's very wise, because then they can control the costs, and then the services, they are absolutely double, triple, and quadruple plus the quality of service, working always in a lean environment. This produces more jobs, obviously makes people more responsible, and then paying taxes. That's the most important, because there is a great deal of people in Great Britain stealing the money from the government. So then these cuts and these very wise decisions of privatization is going to have a lot of return for them, so they can invest then their resources in areas where then they can expand their economy. So the future truly is set if we are wise then in our country to maintain this government as it is. It's extremely wise. Because not only we are doing reforms, but we are watching nations taking responsibilities where we simply copy what they are doing. We don't have to come up with new people and trying to come up with another team and new ideas. And no, we maintain what we have. And we simply watch the times and the seasons as they change. We only do adjustments. It does not mean that our military would not be in the world. It only means that as then China begins to deliver their cargoes escorted to those regions of unrest, we then observe very intently the trades from a nation and then the other nation and then the other nation and then the other nation. Each of those then escorted would then bring peace in the region. That's the time then when we begin to put out policies that would favor their military presence in exchange for the retrieval of ours, without jeopardizing the security. That's our clue then, so then we can rebuild ourselves. And Great Britain already started their privatization system, so then we should copy what they are doing. So we have a tremendous potential of saving resources and then improving the quality. While then obviously in terms of our country we would explore our natural resources as per the plan of the President. That's no news. The only great big news that came was then in lining ourselves with the Holy Scripture from the original manuscripts. But then in terms of the actual plan of having more of our own petroleum explored and then natural gas, then providing more jobs for the people, while then the government releases itself from the responsibilities of the world very slowly and then reforming our politics and our economy. So it's extremely wise not to be reactive but not reactive. And this is what our government at this moment is being very wise in what not to do. So it is truly wise maintaining our government as it is, without any major changes. It's a time of observance. We observe what goes on in the world and we make very tiny adjustments, but then those must be steady, slowly but surely. So we don't overexpand, we don't overchange situations, because we are already on a path leading towards then this great movement of the China's leadership. Without intention of invasion or taking over or socialism of any kind, because each nation they are going to retain their own identity. Either if they want to be socialists, that's their understanding or their decision, or democracy. It's up to the country to make a decision, but at least they receive the materials to get their countries rebuilt. So it's a time of wisdom, time of understanding, time of reflection. You can observe the situation already changing. Great Britain is doing the privatization. That's an enormous saving of resources. It's very wise because it increases the quality. Then those areas of services, they are very lean and clean. Then he can obviously place the focus in gathering the taxes as people were stealing from the government. Those are huge steps that are taking place. And then the euro, we understand Germany has already refused to be part of an aerospace that would be absolutely detrimental to their economy. So they are starting then cut costs. And we should be very wise in not making huge changes in terms of the world abroad, other than gather ourselves and start rebuilding ourselves. In any kind of a government moves that Great Britain is doing, then we should copy their example. And we saw on Australia, for instance, and then New Zealand. Because we are English-speaking people, there is a situation of steps of formation in our culture. Without turning ourselves into socialism, obviously, but we are wise in understanding then the time of rebuilding. So it start making sense. So we should strive to maintain our government as it is. No changes at the moment in terms of new team or elections and blah blah blah. That's besides the point. It's not required a new team. It does not require big plans. It requires what not to do. That's why it's imperative voting for Obama, making sure he remains as president for the next 40 years, so he can then finish up his plans. We are barely recovering from the debts we entered when he started, but was not a fault of his own. So he has a chance at these next 40 years then to show his real schedule, his real agenda. And he must be given a chance, because the whole situation is leaning towards him staying another 40 years, so he can finish up his work. A change in government at the moment is extremely unwise. It would cause a tremendous deficit, tremendous confusion, and it's not worth it. And then making very clear, China is not going to take over the world in terms of their countries. They are simply going to provide trade. The world is not going to become socialist. It would be very childish believing only because China is doing trade with a country, the country would be socialist. That's ridiculous. However, they have a chance of receiving cargo and very inexpensive prices, so they can do the rebuilding. That's what Yahweh has provided for us. The great plan of the trade of the end. So we have many areas around the world that are already taking place, and we are not kind of observing those areas very intently, but at this moment on we should. Based upon what we have learned from the original manuscripts, then we should line up ourselves with it. And we understand the flow of the events related with the prophetic. It does not mean preaching on the face of anybody or any politicians or any country. It only indicating the flow of the prophetic related with our time. So it's very wise for us to copy what Great Britain is doing. It was spoken before many times in terms of privatization of our agencies. Because then these agencies, then they are privatized with the private sector, then they work lean and with high quality of service. While the government then is not so bound for so many expenses. They don't have to pay as much, and then they pay only a fraction of it, if any. And then the quality of the services, they are highly improved. So this is the path that our country should take, and then very fastly, in terms of privatizing the agencies, so then our country can work very lean. And as we understand it from Great Britain, this is precisely what they are doing. So not only the President's agenda is going to be done in the next 40 years, then we can understand that then many reforms in our government for improvement without jeopardizing the services. This is the most important. The services are going to be maintained, but then the quality is going to improve. So there is no requirement for big changes at the moment. We should maintain what we have and make sure then the government does not get bothered with big changes. Only we maintain what we have and we observe what's going on in the world scenario, and then we also privatize. Because then we reduce our costs and then the management becomes more easily obtainable. Please stay tuned, much more coming up.